The spaceport of Valsera was always busy, a tangle of lights, metal, and voices that echoed between the docking towers. Ships of every shape and size came and went, carrying travelers, merchants, diplomats, and those who wished to disappear into the stars. Among all of them, one small human stood out, less for who he was and more for what he did. Jalen had been working in the maintenance bays for years, fixing engines, repairing hulls, and solving mechanical problems that left others scratching their heads. He didn't care for attention. His focus was on the work, on making the machines sing again. On this particular morning, the hum of machinery mixed with the chatter of traders and travelers. Jalen wiped a smear of grease from his forehead and checked the panel in front of him. A small hovercraft had landed, a diplomatic courier from a minor system, but the moment he saw the readings, he knew this was no ordinary repair. The energy output from the ship's engine was unstable, fluctuating dangerously. Whoever piloted it had no idea how close they were to disaster. The ship's hatch hissed open and a figure stepped out. Jalen looked up briefly, expecting a diplomat, a merchant, or a minor official. Instead, he saw a tall figure, graceful and poised, yet with a weight in her posture that spoke of responsibility far beyond her years. Her skin was pale with a faint shimmer, like moonlight on water, and her eyes were a bright violet, sharp and intelligent. She wore a simple tunic with subtle patterns that marked her as someone of high status but not ostentatious. "I need my ship fixed," she said, her voice calm but firm. "It cannot wait." Jalen nodded silently and gestured toward the maintenance bay. He didn't speak much. Words were often unnecessary when hands, tools, and skill could do all the talking. She followed, her steps quiet on the metallic floor, and watched as he opened the engine compartment. The damage was worse than it first appeared. A critical energy core was unstable and the wiring had been tampered with, perhaps during a hurried escape. Jalen didn't panic. He worked slowly, carefully, testing each connection, tightening circuits, replacing worn-out components. The princess observed in silence, her hands clasped in front of her. She did not interfere, though curiosity drew her closer at times. "You are very careful," she said finally, her accent soft but unfamiliar. Jalen paused, wiped his hands, and nodded. "I don't want your ship to fail." Her lips curved into a small smile. "Most would only hurry, trying to finish quickly." "I fix it right the first time," he said simply. No arrogance, no need to impress, just facts. The princess was intrigued. Her species did not choose lifemates through gifts or grand displays of power, but through subtle recognition of character and spirit. She had been trained to observe, to notice courage, kindness, and competence. Something about this human drew her attention. His calm demeanor, his dedication, his quiet confidence. She had not seen these traits in anyone she had met before. Hours passed and the work continued. Sparks flew, circuits hummed, and the air was thick with the scent of metal and ozone. Jalen did not complain, even when his hands were cut by sharp edges or smeared with oil. He hummed softly to himself at times, a habit he did not even realize he had, and it was strangely comforting. The princess began to relax, leaning closer to see his work. She asked questions occasionally, not to test him but out of curiosity, and he answered simply, clearly, without assuming she understood technical details. At one point, she asked about a component that seemed unfamiliar even to her eyes. "What does this part do?" Jalen pointed, his finger steady. "It regulates the energy flow from the core. Without it, the ship could overload or shut down completely." She nodded, impressed. "And you can repair it." "I already am," he said, adjusting a delicate panel and tightening a series of bolts. Sparks danced and the engine thrummed steadily. "It will be stable again soon." The princess watched, fascinated. She had seen engineers and mechanics before, humans and aliens alike, but none with this kind of precision. She felt something she could not name, a pull, a recognition that went beyond words. Her people called it the stir of the heart, a sign that a lifemate might be near, though she dared not hope too quickly. Outside, the spaceport continued its chaos. Merchants shouted, traders bargained, and ships lifted off into the skies, leaving trails of blue and gold light. Inside the bay, time seemed slower, focused on the connection forming silently between human and alien. Jalen did not notice it himself. He did not even glance at her often. His attention remained on the engine, on ensuring it would survive the next voyage. Finally, after hours of careful work, Jalen stepped back and wiped his hands on a cloth. The engine hummed steadily, energy readings stable. "It's done," he said. The princess walked closer, placing a delicate hand on the smooth metal of the engine cover. She could feel the hum, steady and strong. She smiled, a genuine smile, rare for someone of her status. "You did it," she said. "It is perfect." Jalen nodded, still quiet. "It will take you safely wherever you need to go." She studied him for a long moment. "You are different from anyone I have met." He raised an eyebrow, puzzled. "Different how?" "Calm," she said. "Focused, strong, but not in a way that shouts." "You do not need to prove yourself. You simply are." Jalen shrugged, uncertain what to say. He was used to compliments, rarely given and even less often understood. "I just fix things," he said finally. The princess laughed softly. It was a musical sound, bright and warm, filling the bay in a way that made Jalen look up sharply. She had not expected her own reaction. "You fix more than ships," she said quietly. The hum of the repaired engine filled the silence between them. Outside, a small group of alien merchants glanced at the bay, whispering about the Zephyrian princess and the human mechanic. Some were curious, others disapproving, but none of that mattered to Jalen or Liara. Here, in this moment, there was only the quiet understanding forming between them. Night fell on the spaceport, casting long shadows across the metal floors. The stars outside glimmered through the transparent walls of the docking tower, distant and beautiful, reminding the princess of the world she was meant to protect. She looked at Jalen again, the way his hands moved over the machinery, the way his eyes scanned every detail, never satisfied with less than perfect. She felt a strange certainty in her chest, something her people recognized as the stirrings of a lifemate choice. "I must leave soon," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Jalen looked at her, nodding. "The ship is ready. You can go anywhere safely." She hesitated, then said, "I will remember this." He nodded again. "Do not forget to fuel it," he added, a small attempt at humor that made her smile again. She left the maintenance bay, walking toward her ship. Jalen watched her go, still focused on tidying his tools, unaware of the significance of his actions. He had done what he always did: repair what was broken, ensure safety, and move on. But the princess paused at the hatch, turning slightly to glance back. There was something in her violet eyes, a spark of recognition, an acknowledgement of what she had already decided. The doors hissed closed, and the engines purred to life. Jalen did not see the small, subtle gesture, a hand pressed against the ship's console, a silent acknowledgement of the human who had earned her trust and admiration. She lifted off, leaving a trail of light in the dark sky, heading for the stars that called to her. Jalen returned to his work, unaware that he had already become something far more important than a mere mechanic. Somewhere beyond the distant planets and trading routes, an alien princess had begun a journey not just through space, but toward a lifemate she had silently chosen. The quiet mechanic continued to work in silence, fixing what was broken, solving problems, and leaving the world a little better than he found it. He did not yet know that, by his own hands and simple heart, he had changed a life forever. And for Liara, the princess, that small human had already claimed a place in her heart, a place no star, no mission, no power could ever replace. The spaceport slept, the machines hummed softly, and the first chapter of their story ended quietly, waiting for the next act to begin. The spaceport of Valsera was quieter the next morning. though the hum of activity never fully stopped. Merchants repaired stalls, cargo ships unloaded supplies, and travelers moved between docking towers, their steps echoing softly against the metallic floors. Jalen arrived at the maintenance bay as usual, his hands carrying tools, his eyes scanning the panels of the engines he would soon repair. He did not expect anything unusual. This was just another day in the endless rhythm of work. Yet he could not stop thinking about the Zephyrian princess and her ship. He didn't know why. He had repaired many ships, seen countless dignitaries, and yet something about her lingered in his mind. Perhaps it was the way she observed his work without interfering, or the quiet confidence in her eyes. Perhaps it was the way she smiled at the smallest hints of humor, something rare for someone of her status. Jalen shook his head and focused on his tasks. He was a mechanic. His work did not need thoughts of admiration or recognition. The princess, Liara, had returned earlier than expected. She had left Valsera to continue her diplomatic mission, but a sudden technical issue forced her to land again, seeking the same human mechanic who had fixed her ship with such precision. She watched from the docking tower as Jalen approached, quietly carrying his tools. Her heart gave a small, involuntary leap, not from excitement but from certainty. She had been observing him from afar, even as he worked with other ships, and no one matched the steadiness, the patience, and the quiet brilliance of this human. She stepped into the maintenance bay without announcement. Jalen looked up, surprised but polite, his usual calm returning almost immediately. "Your ship again?" he asked, setting down his tools. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "Something is wrong with the energy matrix. It's unstable and I do not want to take a risk." Jalen nodded silently, moving toward her ship. He opened the panels, his eyes scanning the circuitry with careful precision. Sparks of light danced as he adjusted components, his hands moving with practiced ease. Liara observed, fascinated by his focus. Each small movement, each adjustment seemed effortless to him, yet she knew it required both knowledge and intuition. She asked questions occasionally, not out of doubt but curiosity. "Why do you tighten this here instead of here?" she inquired, pointing to a section of the energy conduit. "Because the core releases pressure in pulses," Jalen explained simply. "If I tighten the other part first, it could create instability. This way, it balances correctly." Liara nodded, impressed. Most mechanics would have hurried to finish, but Jalen worked carefully, ensuring the ship's safety above speed. She felt a subtle warmth in her chest, a recognition that was not entirely conscious. In her culture, lifemates were chosen through observation of character, through the recognition of qualities that aligned with one's spirit. And though she had not admitted it even to herself, she already knew she was witnessing a human worthy of her attention. Hours passed as Jalen worked. He tested circuits, recalibrated the energy core, and replaced worn components. Liara stayed close, not interfering, yet her presence was steady, almost comforting. Occasionally she would hand him a tool or adjust a panel herself, but only when necessary. Her hands were delicate but capable, and she watched him, learning the rhythm of his movements, the care in his choices, the patience he carried without effort. "Do you ever stop?" she asked quietly after a long period of work. Jalen wiped his hands on a cloth, looking up at her. "Stop," he said. "Yes, for rest, for meals, for anything," she clarified. "I eat when I can, rest when it's quiet," he said simply. "Machines don't wait. They need attention." Liara smiled, a small, knowing smile. "And yet you are calm. Nothing seems to trouble you," Jalen shrugged. "Trouble is part of life. I fix what I can, and I do not worry about what I cannot." That simplicity, that focus, struck something deep within her. It was rare to find such calmness in someone, especially in a world full of ambition, fear, and politics. She felt a subtle connection forming, one that went beyond diplomacy or obligation. Her people had long said that when a lifemate appears, recognition is instant, subtle, but undeniable. She was beginning to feel that stir. Suddenly, the bay's alarms blared. A group of mercenaries, hired by a rival delegation, had arrived, seeking to capture the princess's ship and prevent her diplomatic mission. Jalen did not flinch. He moved quickly, shutting down auxiliary power ports and initiating emergency stabilizers in the ship's core. Sparks flew, panels shifted, but he worked calmly, as though this was just another repair. Liara watched, her confidence in him growing with every precise movement. The mercenaries tried to force their way in, but Jalen had anticipated potential breaches. Hydraulic locks engaged and reinforced panels slid into place, holding the intruders at bay. Liara's heart raced, not from fear but from admiration. The human before her was not just skilled, but quick-thinking, courageous, and unafraid to face danger with nothing but his knowledge and calm presence. Once the intruders were forced to retreat, Liara exhaled quietly. "You are remarkable," she said, her voice soft. "I have never seen anyone handle a situation like that." Jalen wiped his hands again as if it were nothing. "I did what needed to be done. No one should be harmed if it can be prevented." "You are more than a mechanic," she whispered, almost to herself. The rest of the day passed in quiet repairs. Liara assisted when necessary, but mostly observed. She found herself laughing softly at his dry humor, marveling at his ingenuity, and feeling a strange certainty growing in her heart. She did not know if she had the right to feel it yet, but she knew her species would soon recognize it formally. Jalen noticed her attentiveness, but did not fully understand its meaning. He had repaired many ships, helped many people, but this human-alien connection was new to him. He felt a subtle sense of responsibility, a desire to ensure her safety and the integrity of her ship. He did not realize that this simple dedication, his quiet confidence and integrity, were exactly the qualities Liara was seeking in a lifemate. As the evening approached, the repairs were nearly complete. Jalen tested the final circuits, watched the engine hum steadily, and double-checked every connection. Liara stepped closer, placing her hand near the control panel, feeling the vibrations of the stabilized energy core. "You have done more than repair my ship," she said softly. "You have ensured my mission can continue safely, and you did it without complaint, without hesitation, without needing recognition." Jalen nodded. "I do not work for recognition. I work because it must be done." Her violet eyes met his, searching for something deeper. She did not need words to recognize it. His humility, his courage, and his intelligence spoke louder than anything she could say. Her people believed that the choice of a lifemate was subtle, but in that moment she knew. This human, quiet and unassuming, had already passed the test that no other had. The night deepened, stars twinkling outside the bay, reflecting in Liara's eyes. She realized she could trust him, not just with her ship but with herself, with her future. She felt a thrill of certainty and calm together, a paradox that only deep connection could bring. "I must leave soon," she said after a pause, her voice steady but carrying weight. Jalen glanced at her, focused yet unaware of the deeper meaning behind her words. "The ship is ready," he said simply. "You can travel safely now." She smiled faintly, a gesture full of meaning. "You do not understand," she said quietly, though not entirely to him, "but you will always be remembered." He nodded, still focused on his tools, still humble, still unaware of the profound impact he had made. The engines hummed steadily, lights blinking rhythmically, a testament to his skill and dedication. As she left the bay and prepared to lift off, Liara glanced back one final time. The human who had fixed her ship in silence, who had handled danger without fear, and who had shown patience and integrity beyond what most could imagine, stood there quietly, unaware of the recognition he had earned. But she knew. She had recognized the lifemate she had been searching for, and he had already passed the test without even knowing it. The ship lifted off, engines glowing against the dark sky, carrying her away on her mission. And Jalen returned to his work, methodical, calm, humble, and unknowingly at the center of a story that would shape the heart of a princess and the destiny of two worlds. Even as stars streaked past the hull of Liara's ship, she felt a bond forming, invisible yet unbreakable. It was not through words, nor grand gestures, but through quiet understanding, shared respect, and the recognition of character. She knew that this human mechanic was extraordinary, not for his strength, nor for wealth, nor for status, but for his simple, steady humanity. And that realization, she knew, would guide her through the choices to come. The flagship of the Zephyrian princess floated silently above Valsera, its sleek hull glinting in the light of distant stars. Inside, the ceremonial chamber was filled with the hum of technology and quiet murmurs from her advisors. Representatives of her people moved gracefully through the room, their eyes observing, their expressions calm but attentive. This was no ordinary ceremony. The Lifemate selection was about to begin, a ritual that would decide the bond between one of her people and the being who would share her life. Liara stood near the center, her violet eyes calm yet focused. She had spent days traveling between systems, negotiating disputes, and attending to her people, but her mind was not on politics now. It was on the quiet human who had repaired her ship, who had faced danger without fear, and whose patience and courage had impressed her more than anyone else ever could. Her heart recognized him already, even if her mind questioned the formality of the ritual. The chamber doors opened with a hiss, and Jalen stepped inside. He had been invited under the pretense of inspecting the ship systems, unaware that he would witness the Lifemate ceremony firsthand. He carried his tools out of habit, his eyes scanning the room. The ornate chamber, the flowing robes of the Zephyrian Council, the soft light reflecting off polished surfaces, all of it would have seemed overwhelming to many, but Jalen walked calmly, his presence steady, unshaken. Liara observed him quietly, noting the way he carried himself. He did not bow, nor did he seem intimidated. He simply was, focused, humble, and unpretentious. She knew then that he had passed the silent test her people valued most. He possessed courage, patience, and integrity, all without knowing he was being judged. The High Council of Zephyria began the ceremony. Representatives spoke of tradition, duty, and the importance of the Lifemate bond. Liara's role was clear. She would signal her choice through observation, gesture, and decision. Many expected her to select a noble or someone of influence, someone who could strengthen political ties, but her eyes, calm and unwavering, were fixed on the human in front of her. Jalen glanced around, slightly puzzled. He did not understand the ceremony, but he noticed the attention directed at him. He adjusted his grip on a small tool, unsure of why all eyes seemed to follow his simple, steady movements. Liara stepped forward, her hand raised in a subtle signal, a gesture understood by her people but unnoticed by him. A council member spoke, announcing the procedure. Candidates would be evaluated not for wealth or status, but for character, for courage, for integrity, and for the quiet strength that carried one through hardship. Liara felt a deep certainty. This human embodied all of these traits. He had faced danger calmly, repaired what was broken without expectation, and acted without seeking reward. Her choice was already made, though she would complete the ritual with grace and tradition. One by one, other candidates, diplomats, nobles, and warriors, were presented. They bowed, displayed skill, and spoke eloquently, but none matched the quiet human standing with tools in hand. Liara's eyes followed him, noting how he responded naturally to situations, how he remained composed, and how he treated the world with fairness and care. It was a rare quality, almost unheard of among beings of influence or power. Finally, Liara stepped forward. The room fell silent as she addressed the council. "The choice has been made," she said, her voice steady and clear. "It is not one of rank, nor of wealth, nor of obligation. The Lifemate I choose is one whose character speaks louder than any title." Her violet eyes turned to Jalen. He looked at her, confused, not fully understanding the significance. I don't understand, he said softly. You will, she said with a small smile. Step forward. He did so, still cautious, still humble, still unaware of the importance of this moment. The council watched silently, their expressions neutral, but Liara's heart was full. She extended her hand, a simple gesture that signaled her choice according to Zephyrian custom. Jalen hesitated, looking at her hand, then at her eyes. Something in that gaze, the calm, the certainty, the respect, made him realize this was no ordinary ritual. He had always repaired what was broken, faced danger without fear, and acted without expectation. But this was different. You mean me? He asked, voice quiet but steady. Liara nodded. Yes, you are the one I have chosen. A murmur ran through the chamber, some shocked, others impressed. But Liara did not waver. She had watched him for days, observing his actions, his reactions, and his heart. He was courageous, humble, and true. He was everything her people valued in a lifemate. Jalen lowered his eyes briefly, absorbing the weight of her words. He had never sought recognition or reward, yet here it was, offered not for what he had done, but for who he was. He lifted his gaze to meet hers. I will do my best, he said simply. Liara smiled, her confidence unwavering. That is all I could ask. The council members nodded in approval. The ritual required acknowledgement, a simple acceptance from the chosen lifemate, and Jalen's calm, honest response satisfied the tradition. The chamber seemed to glow with quiet energy as the bond was acknowledged. Outside the chamber, the flagship's engines hummed gently, a reminder of the vast universe waiting beyond. Liara and Jalen stepped toward the observation deck, where the stars stretched endlessly, distant worlds twinkling in the void. She looked at him, still carrying the same humility and quiet strength that had drawn her to him in the first place. You saved my ship, she said softly, and in doing so you saved more than I realized. You have earned a place beside me, not through skill alone, but through your heart. Jalen nodded, feeling a strange warmth he had not expected. I did what I had to do, he said. But I am honored, Liara smiled, a mix of relief and joy. The choice had been made, and it felt right, as though the universe itself had aligned to bring them together. The quiet human who had repaired her ship in silence was now recognized as her lifemate, a bond that would shape their lives and the future of her people. The following days were filled with preparation. Jalen learned the protocols of her people, observing their customs with humility and curiosity. He repaired more than just ships now. He repaired small devices, solved technical challenges, and helped Liara navigate the political intricacies of her role. Each moment reinforced the bond between them, built not on grand gestures, but on shared respect, trust, and understanding. Liara observed him constantly, noticing the little things, the way he treated others with fairness, the way he remained calm in stressful situations, the way he laughed softly at minor jokes, and the way he never demanded attention. She realized that this human strength was not in power or skill alone, but in his unwavering humanity. A diplomatic delegation arrived from a neighboring system, expecting to see a princess bound by tradition. Instead, they saw her with a human by her side, calm, confident, and respected. Whispers spread through the corridors, some skeptical, some admiring, but all were forced to recognize the undeniable bond between Liara and Jalen. The human, who had repaired a ship in silence, had now captured the respect of an alien civilization through his character alone. One evening, as the twin suns of Valsera set beyond the horizon, casting golden light across the flagship, Liara and Jalen stood together on the observation deck. The stars reflected in her violet eyes, and she felt a deep peace. You are different from anyone I have ever known, she said quietly. I am just a mechanic, Jalen replied, his tone calm, yet carrying a quiet pride. Not just a mechanic, she said softly. A human, steady, true, and brave. You have shown what it means to act with integrity, and that is more valuable than any title or power. He looked at her, understanding now the depth of the connection they shared. Then I will stay by your side, he said simply, as best I can. Liara reached out, taking his hand. The gesture was simple, yet filled with meaning. It was the acknowledgement of a life-mate bond, a promise of trust, respect, and companionship that transcended species and worlds. The stars stretched endlessly beyond them, and in that vast expanse, the bond between a human mechanic and an alien princess shone brightly. It was not through grand heroics or wealth, but through quiet courage, humility, and integrity. Humanity had proven its worth once again, not through conquest but through heart. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown dangers and wonders, but together, Liara and Jalen felt ready to face it all. The princess had chosen her life mate, and the human had unknowingly passed every test. Their story was just beginning, a tale of trust, respect, and the quiet power of human spirit that could shine even among the stars. The engines hummed, the stars glimmered, and the future awaited. Two beings from entirely different worlds had found each other, and in that connection, both discovered the strength, courage, and hope that would carry them through whatever the galaxy had in store.